you mute yourself again? Good evening. I'm calling the regular meeting of the University Place City Council for Monday, October 18th, 2021 to order. This is a hybrid meeting. Myself and our city clerk are in council chambers along with a couple of our citizens in attendance, and therefore we are wearing masks as the rest of the council that you are seeing are at home, safe and sound. So we are in compliance with the governor's orders. At this time, may I ask for a roll call, please?
Councilmember Figueroa.
Councilmember Figueroa present.
Councilmember Fleming.
Councilmember Fleming here.
Councilmember Keel.
Councilmember Keel present.
Councilmember Lee.
Councilmember Lee present.
Councilmember McCluskey.
Councilmember
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Mayor Pro Tem Worthington present.
Mayor Belisi.
Mayor Belisi is here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you. And this evening, Councilmember Keel will be leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. For those of us that are in council chambers, may I request that you stand for the pledge?
Great, thank you. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty, justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel. The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda, but I would like to submit the revised agenda to include the proclamation for the Islamic Center of Tacoma that you received via email this afternoon. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as revised?
Mayor Belisi, this is Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, and I move for the approval of the agenda as revised.
Do I have a first? Do I have a second?
This is Councilmember Keel. I second.
Okay. Do I have any objections to approving the agenda as revised? Okay. Seeing none, motion carries. The agenda passes unanimously. Thank you. At this time on the agenda, we have a presentation or proclamation to the Islamic Center. As many of us in the community are aware, here a week or so ago, there was a fire at the Islamic Center. And I know I personally was very upset and angry at what had happened there, as well as many in our community. I have spoken with representatives from the Islamic Center and offered our support to them should they need it at this point, but right now they're going through an investigation to determine exactly what happened. We will be hearing about that information later tonight under the city manager's report. But at this time, I would like to do the proclamation that will be sent to the Islamic Center. The City of University Place Proclamation. Whereas the City of University Place takes pride in being an open, welcoming, and inclusive community for people of all races, colors, religion, ages, or gender expressions, and whereas the City of University Place supports the rights of all citizens of the United States to practice their faith openly and freely, and does not tolerate acts of hate, intolerance, discrimination that undermine these rights. And whereas the Islamic Center of Tacoma describes their goals as seeking to foster and create an environment for the Muslim community in our community that provides an array of religious, educational, and recreational activity for its members and the members of the public at large. And whereas the City Council of the City of University Place believes that the recent arson at the Islamic Center of Tacoma requires us all to reaffirm our commitment to equality and inclusion, condemn acts of hate, and show our support to those within the community who suffer from acts of violence. Now, therefore, the City Council of the City of University Place expresses its strong support for the Islamic Center of Tacoma and our local Islamic community, and we will collaborate with our federal, state, and local partners to ensure that the acts at October 11th, 2011 are fully investigated and those responsible are held accountable in a court of law. October 18th, 2021. And with that, I hope that this is the last time that we in the City Council have to make such a proclamation, that I hope will come together as a community and support each and every one of our community members, regardless of faith or any other type of discriminatory acts. So at this time, we are in the public comment section. I will open it first to the public comments for those that are in the audience. While I lay out the information, individuals that are wishing to speak will be given 3 minutes to provide their comments. First, we're going to take comments from those present in the chamber. Then we will take comments from those joining us remotely. The information for those joining us remotely are currently on your screen. For those of you that may be on the phone, you can call in remotely at 1-509-342-7253 using conference ID number 151-766-537#. With that, is there anyone in the audience this evening that would like to address the council? Okay, you can come forward and stand behind the available computer. Please provide your name and address for the records. No, governor requirement.
All right.
I believe you will need to turn, I don't know if your mic is turned on or not. Okay.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Belici, City Council members, and University Place citizens. My name is Steve Thorndale. I live on 53rd Street West. My email.
You will need to turn it on. I've gotten an indication that they are not able to record. So turn the button on and the.
Did turn the other.
There. Sorry about that. We're still working through our technical.
All right, I'll start over and I still get my 3 minutes,
yes,
right?
Yes.
All right, good. My name is Steve Thorndale. To reach me, best is stevethorndale@gmail.com. My wife and I have been residents of University Place for over 30 years, and I've been on the Park Advisory Commission from 2018 to 2020. While on the PAC, I served as the chair for the final year and a half. I joined the PAC as I've always been passionate about outdoor activities and parks and want to help promote the parks that we have to the community so parks will be used by everyone. I also wanted to advocate for improving the parks with additional amenities where needed, such as trails, additional restrooms, building sports courts, additional picnic facilities, etc. Although we have many fine parks in UP, we can and should make a number of improvements. To do so, of course, requires funding. One of the major places to apply for funds to match for the city set-aside funds is through the Washington State Recreation and Conservation Office, RCO. Typically, this funding can be applied for in the spring of even number years. In 2020, the last year that UP applied for RCO funding, Council did not recommend that the city apply for several of the top priority projects recommended by the Park Advisory Committee in 2020. These top priority projects were also highly recommended by citizens through focus groups and surveys completed in the fall of 2019. Instead, the city applied for RCO funding for several projects recommended by the city's Director of Parks and Public Works. Although the projects applied for were good projects and ones that the PAC fully endorsed, my point is that they were not the new amenities most requested by University Place citizens or the PAC. One of PAC's highest priorities was to build outdoor sports courts complex at Cirque Park to include tennis, pickleball, and basketball courts. None of our UP parks currently have any of these sports courts. PAC was told by Mayor Belici in the fall of 2019 at a council meeting that the space PAC recommended sports courts be built was reserved in the 1999 Cirque Park Master Plan for another purpose. Therefore, the council could not consider that recommendation. My recollection is at that time, the mayor and council agreed to work with others to bring together a group to review and update the Cirque Park Master Plan. Now, 2 years later, no progress has been made on the review of the master plan. My hope in bringing this to your attention today is to urge the council and city staff to bring together the right set of people to review and update the Cirque Park Master Plan soon. This might then allow ample time for the city to apply for state funds for the outdoor sports complex at Cirque Park during the 2022 RCO application cycle. That assumes the project would remain one of the highest priorities funding by the current PAC Commission, and the revised master plan would support these activities. If you wait too long for the group to convene, that you essentially forfeit the city's chances of applying for the sports court matching funds until 2024 or beyond. Again, I urge you to act soon on this. The citizens of UP deserve the completion of these projects sooner rather than later. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Thornhill. Do we have anybody on the phone that is wanting to speak? I'm not aware of any unknown calls at this time. Okay, with that, I will close the public comment section. We are on to the next item, which is the consent agenda. I'd like to call for a motion to approve or amend the consent agenda as provided.
Mayor Belisi, this is Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, and I move for the approval of the consent agenda as provided.
Okay, I have a first. Do I have a second?
This is Councilmember Keel. I second.
Okay, I have a first and a second. Are there any objections? Okay, seeing none at this time, the motion passes unanimously. Thank you. We are now on to our next section of our agenda, which is the city manager report. May I ask for Mr. Steve Sugg to come on camera?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. And tonight we have with us Sergeant Darren Moss with Pierce County Sheriff's Office, Public Information Office. And Sergeant Moss is going to provide you with an update. I believe he is with us on the Teams call tonight. Here we go. Thank you, Darren.
All right, thank you. So the Sheriff's Department is working in collaboration with the FBI and the ATF, along with the University Place Police Department, to investigate the arson that occurred on Monday, October 11th, around 8:10 p.m. In the city of University Place. At this time, we have minimal information to give out as far as related to this investigation. But what we can say is so far we don't have any known motives at this time. It's really early in the investigation. Until we can find and talk to a person of interest, then we would have more information that could lead us to believe that this could be a hate crime or a crime against a church. But right now we know it is an arson. We are investigating it to the best of our abilities. And right now we have just come up with some photos of a suspect or a person of interest in this investigation. If you guys could put those on the screen for me. So this gentleman was at the Bartell drugstore on 27th and Bridgeport Way at about, 7:14 p.m. Prior to the arson, the fire being set to the Islamic Center of Tacoma. This is the gentleman that we will be looking for our investigation. We don't have probable cause to make an arrest, but he is a person of interest in this investigation. We are asking the public if they have any information about this individual, or they know who he is, or they saw him at the store that night and have any information about this incident, to please let the University Place Police Department know, or the Pierce County Sheriff's Department.
All right. Well, thank you, Sergeant Moss. And just wanted to ask if council had any questions before we let Sergeant Moss get on with his other duties. All right.
Nope.
So with that, Mayor, I'm going to turn to ask, thank you, Sergeant Moss. Appreciate your coming tonight and speaking with the council. So now we're going to turn to a report and Amanda's going to put up a PowerPoint presentation. I will make this very quick. I know that you have other business to attend to tonight. I moved this from the October 4th meeting to tonight, where we had a little more room on the agenda. So with that, I'm going to have Amanda cue on the first slide. This is a look at the 2021 in retrospective, as we close out the rest of the year. We just have a few meetings left, so I thought we'd take this meeting. We had a little bit additional, less packed meeting, and we would just run through this real quick. So for tonight, wanted to just bring this up. As you know, this is just a reminder. It's a visual tour of what I think has been a tremendous year for the council, for the community, for the staff, in terms of operating in a pandemic, and this goes without exception. So these are just reminders that, yes, you were able to get all these events accomplished. Unfortunately, we're not able to get our largest events, Duck Days, Oktoberfest, and the holiday tree lighting done. We went to a virtual tree lighting again this year. Oktoberfest had to be canceled. But we all keep our fingers crossed as we look forward to 2022. So the next slide, please. Thank you. And you're going to hear about this at a future meeting. The National Association of Telecommunications Officials and Advisors met last month and awarded first place to University Place. Thank you, Linda and Amanda, and your great team, and your Dave Kelman and others. Pierce County TV, which operates our UPTV. This was not an easy, this was a lot of submittals. We got #1. It's always nice to be able to say you're #1, but we know we didn't do it for that reason, but we submitted it and we got #1. So thank you, Linda and Amanda. The next slide, please. Council had a very busy year starting in last December and then rolling in through 2021. Your passage of form-based code, multifamily tax exemption, and some other tools has allowed some other projects to go forward. This one is under construction. It's a very dark photo of the site prior to, that was off of Google Earth. It kind of looked like that, and that's what it looked like. And when it's done and it's under construction, it'll have 2 buildings and a much needed improvement, plus a public street to the town center grid. And the next slide shows a similar result of council's decision to, again, pass form-based code and the other zoning code provisions that has allowed this project to move forward. And we expect this to break ground in early 2022, starting with demolition. If you remember, that theater has been vacant and dark and boarded up for many, many years. And it's going to be, that property is going to be transformed, and that we'll all look forward to that. And then the other big project, which I hear a lot about, you hear a lot about, is the corner at 27th and Grandview, which has looked like that in the upper left corner, and it still does, but it won't much longer. There's more optimism in the Community and Economic Development Department as of today than there ever has been for this project to move forward. So it's in for permits. The visual in the lower right gives you some expectation of what the scale and the visual features of this. Obviously, we'll look forward to this emerging out of the ground. So that will be another 2022 project, as we're being told by the developer. So the next slide is here in our own building, that there's 2 key leases. Happy Duo Cafe, council authorized a 10-year lease with both of these tenants, and SNH is an appraisal firm on the 2nd floor. 10-year leases occupying key spaces. Obviously, that's revenue coming in, but it's also really high-quality users. So we look forward to, there will be a bakery on the ground floor, and they're going to bake on site. And so there's wonderful bakery smells, and it should be a great place and a real draw for the community. And the next slide is just a notice. 25 years ago, the Bridgeport and the downtown looked like this, and now I think the council should be proud that we, it's 25 years, and this is the current slide on the right, current photo, we'll look forward to. There's still lots more to do, not only here but also in other parts of town. Which again, those other photos and renderings that you saw is the council's efforts to stimulate development in the various commercial districts. So well done. And then, but that's not all. We have a very strong finance. We underplayed this. We didn't, advertise this, but I thought it was well worth bringing this back to your attention. Back in June, Moody's of this year, Moody's said that we were far stronger than the U.S. median, and superior to other Moody's rated cities nationwide. So this is an incredible achievement, and Leslie Blaisdell, finance director, and her team did a fantastic job. Along with the staff, we grew the general fund ending fund balance by $2.3 million this year, more than it was previously. So again, well done in the financial area. And then moving on to public safety, which we have a great relationship, as you saw, with our Pierce County Sheriff's Office. They provide us with a wonderful chief and team of officers. The chief held 2 6-week virtual public safety academies in the council-approved and CARES-funded virtual studio in the police station. So I don't know how many of the council members have seen this in action, but here's a couple of photos that shows what that. And then with a little larger event, we held a Conversations with the Chief Community Forum on the next slide in our hybrid chambers. So whether you participated virtually or in person, as we had a number of people show up, we were able to hold we were able to use the hybrid chambers, which only went hybrid just last month. So anyway, we're and continuing public safety. The conversation never ends. You got to keep it going, and we didn't let the pandemic slow us down. So great kudos to the chief and public safety manager Jennifer Hales for keeping up the communication. And now rolling into infrastructure, because I know council, we've been talking about infrastructure a lot with the American Rescue Plan Act and sewers and so forth, but that'll be for another day. I wanted to talk a little bit about what's happening on the street front. Cirque Drive Phase 3 got completed at the end of last year, early this year. That finishes off Cirque Drive, as you know, and it puts us over 43 miles of sidewalks and bike lanes in the city. By the way, over 80% of those were grant funded. Now, Jack tells miles of arterials to go, so we're not quite done yet. And then the next slide is Larson Lane, which was council back last fall approved a development agreement with Frank Hawkins across the street with his company, and we were able to get a critical link in our downtown street grid done as a result of that development agreement. So well done, and that was completed this year. And then under construction is the next slide shows a critical arterial street link that has been missing for decades, and it's under construction. And will be complete sometime in probably 2022, probably next year. So there's that's well underway. And so now I'm going to roll into, we have a very small but very capable maintenance crew. And I wanted to point out the things that are going on, including, some of the forgotten things like Arbor Day tree plantings. That is that's important. We do celebrate that each year. We try to plant a tree or two. The next slide shows what happens when you use the in-house professionals assigned are to fix and refurbish things. Well, we got this artwork restored by our own crew member, Tony West, and led that effort and saved the city more than $17,000. And as you know, hopefully next month we're able to do a ribbon cutting and celebration of the Veterans Plaza on the next slide. And as you can see, last month we had a crew out there preparing the pad. I think earlier this week, or actually yesterday, I sent you all a copy, a photo of the wall that's under construction, the CMU wall. So a combination of contractors along with city crew. And we're very excited about this, and we're all going to be very happy to have that those flagpoles go up and the plaza completed. Obviously, it's going to be in stages, but I've been told that November 11th there will be an event out there. So then the next one is Kobayashi retaining wall going down to the Kobayashi Park. That slope needed a retaining wall, and rather than hire a contractor out, we had some extra block in the yard and we laid some block. I'd like to have them come do work in my yard, but I'm not going to do that. But that you can see that's a very professional looking job. I'm very proud to show that one off. And then as you know, and we are getting prepared for winter. Again, I've been told that and been reading about the La Nina, second year of La Nina, which is supposed to be cold and wet, which we all know what that means. Good possibility. So we're getting ready for next year. This event, kind of like the other one a couple years ago, our crew went 3 days straight, 24/7. Just went home long enough to get some sleep and get back and keep these trucks rolling. The next one is it's that season, and we're getting ready for storm season. We got the street sweeper running. I mean, it runs year round, but this time of year especially is to make sure. And it's one of the key reasons that UP is such a pleasant city. It's not just the improvements that Jack and his engineering team get to build, but it's how you maintain things that really shows that the community cares, that this community cares about the quality of the physical environment. The next one is a photo of crack sealing. Now you might say, well, why show crack sealing? Well, it's not often I get to explain why we do this, and why do we put tar in those cracks? Well, that extends the life of the pavement considerably by keeping water out. If we didn't do that, we'd be out there replacing the entire asphalt pavement of many, many streets. So that would break us financially. So in order to keep up with it and keep us from incurring some tremendous expenses, is that we do this. Now, the next slide will show what happens when crack sealing isn't enough, and sometimes at some point you have so many cracks, you've repaired it for so long, you need to do a pavement patch, and we have our crew is capable of doing both crack sealing and pavement patching when required. And then finally, talking about pavement resurfacing, which council approved this program several years ago. Our chip seal program is in its, we're back on the chip seal program. We started that a few years ago. We're now doing 8 miles of streets a year. And this is an example on Sunset Drive. There's obviously more than that, but this was the longest segment. It's that long line down the middle of that map from end to end. So I wanted to just review with you because 2021 is going to get away from us. We'll be busy into 2022 projects. Take our breath and take stock of where we've been, and also helps inform us as to where we want to go. So with that, Mayor, I'm going to ask Amanda to stop sharing and see. There's a question.
Yes, Mr. Sugg, Councilmember Fleming has a question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick comment, not so much a question, but Steve, if you go back and look at your picture on Cirque Drive, the work that you did on that, I think it's backwards because the before picture shows sidewalks and the after picture shows the sidewalks gone.
Oh,
So,
we don't do that. We don't deconstruct. Thank you, Stan. I will make sure that that is corrected.
I thought, oh God, we're going back to the natural look, huh?
We're coming, yeah, we'll be on a street near you doing the same thing, so.
Oh my gosh. All right.
Thank you.
Councilmember
Great
McCluskey.
presentation otherwise.
Councilmember McCluskey, you had a quick question?
Not a question, just a comment. Thank you, Mayor. That's amazing progress and hopeful projects along the way, especially 27th and Grandview, and, you know, Narrows and the 27th Business District are so strategically important. So I'll be really thrilled when I see SHAG up and running there. You know, long awaited improvement. And everything else you reported from all the departments are just amazing. So on behalf of the council and myself, I give him a heartfelt thank you. We're so grateful because actually they make us look really good. And we're just sitting here saying, yeah, do the project. And you guys do all the work.
Well, thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. I can say to the full council that the policies that the big, huge lift that you've made last year and continue to make on some of these big zoning code policies have been critical for us to, to create the running room for us to make stuff happen. So thank you. That creates huge leverage to get some big projects going. You don't, I know you do realize it, but sometimes until you see it, you don't realize, wow, that actually was as a result of council action on a particular night in this room. So thank you again.
That is so true. So I also would like to point out, because of not this seated council, but the previous councils, our forefathers of our city, had the foresight to bring in, and you, Mr. Sugg, Dan Burton, to design Bridgeport and to get us on the right trail for a walkable, livable community for our health and well-being. He's now part of Blue Zones, and I was looking at his previous presentation because sometimes I follow the Blue Zones trail to see kind of what new science is out there for livability and walkability and health and well-being, and encouraging people, unbeknownst to them, to get out and move more and walk. And he still has our Bridgeport pictures there of when it was redone and the roundabouts. And I think it's Grandview as well as one of the prime examples of livability and how a city can turn itself around. And so we should be pretty proud of that. It's still a forward-thinking project, and it's good enough, 20 plus years, and it's still being shown as an example to the nation as well as the world under Blue Zones and Dan Burton's presentations that he continues to do throughout the world. So I think that's pretty cool. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Councilmember. Appreciate that. And every council is given its challenges. You have risen to the challenges of advancing the city, and my staff is really excited about the prospects for the future because of the policies implemented. Now they get to do what they do best. So thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Sugg. At this time, we are open for council comments and report outs. Councilmember Figueroa, do you have a council comment or report out at this time?
Okay.
You're
Councilmember Figueroa does not have any comments.
Okay, thank you, sir. Councilmember Keel, do you have any report outs or comments at this time?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. 2 comments and a report. My first comment is about the Moody's comment. around our ending fund balance being like above the average or among the best in the country. We need to have that plastered like everywhere, you know, in our newsletter. We should call it TNT, you know, we should call it Seattle Times. I mean, because they weren't shy about plastering it all over their paper when we were in the red and being, you know, like the laughingstock. So I would just, Mayor, I would just encourage you to work with the city manager. I mean, I'm serious about this. Get it out in a press release to, you know, at least from that standpoint, that we've done our part to let them know. Because that to me is very key. I also want to thank you, Mayor, in getting that proclamation done for the Islamic Center of Tacoma. It is repugnant and totally revolting for a person to do such a thing to such a place. I mean, it's a house of worship, and to reach out to a group of people just because of how they worship is so un-American, and I'm 100% against that, and I thank you for taking the lead and making that proclamation, and I support that and back it, as I know all of my colleagues do as well, 100%. So thank you for that. One report out that I have is two things. I'm actually eyeball deep into two searches for CEOs. I'm going through a search for a CEO with AWC. Right now, we've got the search committee and we're looking at groups and all that stuff, just full blown. And I'm also up to my eyeballs in search for a new CEO with Sound Transit. So both of those organizations are going to have a new leader within 2022, and I would just invite any of my colleagues, if you've got any ideas or notions or thoughts about what you think we should be looking for in both of those positions, I would welcome your comments over the next few months. Thank you, Mayor. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel. Councilmember Lee, do you have any report outs or comments at this time?
Councilmember Lee, I have no report out or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember McCluskey, do you have any report outs or comments at this time?
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Belisi, and I wholeheartedly concur with Councilmember Keel on everything he has stated as regards to the Moody's rating. And I would say put a banner across Bridgeport with neon lights around it. But anyway, I'm really proud of our team and staff. It's so exciting to see all the new developments and the results and the outcomes. It's really brings that full circle to what we do and how important our decisions are, so that our staff can do what the citizens would like to continue to improve our community and our infrastructure. I was at Curtis Junior High today, and a couple of students came up to me and they provided me with some of their thoughts because I was talking about the city's 25th year visioning project that we're doing. And so I'd like to share them, if I may, with the City Council. One thought from a young man was on our zoning laws, and I'm going to try to read it verbatim as best I can. My first thought is on the zoning laws in UP and how adding more mixed-use housing along the main road could bring the different look and feel while still not changing the majority of our city. So, I explained some of the things we were doing, and also that he's welcome to do additional comments as we move along in that. His second thought was on Chambers Bay Golf Course. He doesn't want to get rid of the golf course, but he would like them to add more trees because he liked the more forested look. It was a sand pit before, but I guess he would like to add more trees along the way. And I was just thinking, you know, if we had a US Open on a very difficult course and we put our big evergreen trees out there, that would even make it more difficult and more fun to watch, right? And his last thought I thought was extremely well thought out as well. And it is the additions of sidewalks to Bridgeport near the Fred Meyer. He's talking about along 27th Street going towards Fred Meyer. He explains that it is really dangerous to get down that hill, especially if you're walking and crossing over. So his recommendation, and I hope Mr. Eklund is taking note, maybe for a grant, to add a crossing on top of that hill. He thinks that would be nice and safer. And then the cars and the pedestrians would be able to see each other better. And my last comment was from a student who wants to encourage the city council to put speed bumps near the school zone, especially UP primary, should be added. It's so busy, and she sees so many speeding cars along that corridor along 27th Street. And there should also be, obviously, visible sidewalks, since a lot of, I can't read this word, but anyway, they turn on to the gravel road. So she's also talking about 27th Street, right across from the senior center as well. The cars speeding down towards that signal towards UP primary. And so she is really concerned about the safety and the people walking and the students traversing back and forth along that school zone. And I know I explained to her, we had talked about that, and we're still investigating that because we know that that's an issue and we would like to see that corrected. So I thought that they were all very interesting and important ideas and well thought out. So I wanted to share it with you guys. So that's all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. Councilmember Fleming, do you have any comments or report outs at this time?
I do, Madam Mayor, and thank you. I want to echo Councilmember Keel's comments because they are so spot on tonight, especially with the Islamic Center. There is no room in this city for the hatred that was exhibited by the perpetrator of that event there, and I do hope that our sheriff and the FBI and all those that are working that case find him. It just, you know, this city, there's no room in this city for hatred, period. For any one of religion, ethnicity, race, orientation, doesn't matter. There's no room in this city for that kind of hatred. City financials, same thing. I applaud Councilmember Keel's comments. I do remember the time when the newspapers very freely and deliberately bashed the city for where it was. I think this is one of those, we get the last word this time, and I like the idea of the banner across Bridgeport. But why don't you just get one of those airplanes at the football games and just carry the banner around the city? I like that even better. But you know, certainly kudos to our city staff. You know, from the finance department to the road crews to our public safety. I mean, these are all-star players that we have, and they're just doing an absolute amazing job in elevating the city to all new heights. You know, I think our city manager made a comment about the roads here in UP. What a transformation from where they used to be to the safe roads that they are on the main thoroughfares that we have. I recall, I think no one here on this meeting tonight would remember back when Grandview was a drag strip. where you could go out there with your car and get it up to about 110, 120 miles an hour, and no one cared and no one bothered you. So to see where it was and where it is today, again, that's huge. The last thing I want to talk about is just keeping the council informed. The celebration of life for Councilmember Grassi, the date has been changed. I believe it was supposed to be the 23rd of October. It is now November 13th. It's a Saturday. Time has not been set. I think the family's still working through a couple more details on that before they set the time limit. But if you're marking your calendars right now, the date is November 13th. So with that, I have nothing further to add, so thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Fleming. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, do you have any comments or report outs at this time?
Thank you, Mayor Bellisi. Yes, a few quick things, and most of it is just to echo many of the things that have been said tonight, including the issue of hate in our community and the tolerance and the understanding and the love we need to share. This is all very disheartening. On a much more heartening, positive side of things, Councilmember McCluskey's comments from the students and our forward-thinking folks there were a great sign to see, to hear about, and glad to hear about their engagement in thinking about their community and what they're going to make of it. And also echoing the idea of our all-star team here and the work that they've done. What we saw tonight with Mr. Suggs' presentation is a great way to highlight the accomplishments of our team. And it has been a difficult year, but looking back, it's been a very productive year for us. The challenges actually were huge. And yet, with these folks, we've been able to get quite a bit done and some key accomplishments, not completed, certainly underway. I thank them for that. And thank you, Mayor Bellisi. Those are my comments for tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Well, I want to echo some of the comments that my fellow council members made, in particular to the Islamic Center. I was in contact with Mr. El Hassan, who is one of the board members of the Islamic Center, and it was very heartening for me to hear that our community, as well as the local communities, have reached out to the Islamic Center and that they have been able to find temporary locations at which to continue their services. So that was excellent news, and I appreciate that the number of supporters definitely has outweighed the negative and awful thing that has happened to this center. I know that he did tell me that he and his fellow Muslims in the community have been very warmly embraced by everyone, and I would hope that this would continue as this investigation continues, and that we show each other love and appreciation and help each other out through difficult times. And if there is anybody out there, as Sergeant Moss showed the picture of the person of interest, I would hope that they would find it in their heart in contact with the Sheriff's Department so that we can conclude this and move forward in this matter and restore trust and humanity in our community. With that, I want to remind council, before we go on to anything else, that next Monday, October 25th, we have an executive session starting at 6 p.m., not 6:30, so please plan on attending at 6 o'clock. Since our last council meeting, we announced the passing of Councilmember Grassi. I was not able or did not feel it appropriate to announce some of the business celebrations that we have been conducting. So I have a rather lengthy list of new family-owned and run businesses from UP residents that we have had the honor over the last 2-3 weeks to celebrate. One of them was a collected home that is located on 27th Street. They've been in our community for a couple years. I would encourage anybody that's looking for unique housing or decorative items to go and visit the collected home, I will guarantee that you probably cannot leave without finding a unique gift or a unique addition to your house. I know I was one of those that could not walk away, as I'm sure Councilmember Worthington will attest to. He had some additions to his new wine cave at his house. There was also ribbon cutting for two businesses that are located behind the Bartels Center. They kind of work jointly together. One is the Second Born Maternity that sells gently used maternity wear. And I got to tell you, the maternity wear of today is not the maternity wear that I wore 30-some years ago when I was pregnant with children. So if you know anybody that is in that situation, or you have clothes that you would like to get rid of, they are a fantastic business. And then downstairs from them is what's called Pop-Up Kids. They sell gently used kids' clothes from newborn all the way to size 7 or 8, I think. And it was opened during the height of the pandemic and have made a tremendous success at being able to connect using digital and social media to get their clients. But it's another option here for University Place to find these unique clothing items. Another ribbon cutting was from Canway Asbestos and Demolition. So if you're looking for, you have some asbestos work that needs to be done or even demo work, they are locally owned and operated. In fact, the wife of the owner is a Curtis High grad, and they live in University Place. So I think it's always important to remind our citizens to think locally and search locally. You'll find unique businesses. The final one was a ribbon cutting that was held today. It's called Lilith Pole and Aerial Dance. And I think that this is definitely the most unique ribbon cutting that we have had in our city. And it is strictly a company owned by a lady that lives here in University Place, had a vision, and has put in a lot of muscle to get this dance studio up and running. And she has done a wonderful job. And so if you're looking for a unique way to do expressive dance, we have Lilith Pole and Aerial Dance that is an option for you. Also this morning, I attended the first executive session for the South Sound Affordable Housing Project. A total of 14 jurisdictions have now signed on, so we will be getting the interlocal agreement that will be coming forward for signature here shortly. The executive session today was just basically to lay the groundwork on how we're going to move forward. One of the items will be at our next meeting. We will be voting to elect a leadership team that will basically be responsible for setting up the meetings and managing those meetings. Basically a chair and a co-chair. And also interviewing for staffing. As you recall, there was 1.5 FTEs that were slated to be budgeted for. So the county is currently working on doing that interviewing. In fact, I'm scheduled this Wednesday to participate in the second round of interviewing. We did make one executive decision, and that was to designate Pierce County as the administering agency. That is not set in stone. If the executive board at any time decides that Pierce County will not be the administering agency, meaning that they just do the basic management of the program and oversee the budget expenditures, et cetera, the executive board has the authority to make those changes. And with that, that is my adventure for the last 2 weeks. So thank you very much, and don't forget October 25th, 6 p.m. I know that's an off week, but I fully expect that we will have a productive executive session that evening. So with that, we are on to our study session section of our agenda. Our first item for study, and this is the third study, for those of you
Mayor?
that are counting, yes, Councilmember
I'm
Keel.
sorry. I just had a very quick question for you. I apologize. When you talked about the homelessness, the housing
The
piece,
shape,
and yeah, and how are we participating? Will we have to select a member from our council to be a representative there, or could any of us go at any time?
we would have to designate, it's any council member or staff or mayor, and we did not really do any authoritative call out when we approved the shape, the shape participation. So I went as the representative, and I was going to put it on the agenda it should be agenda for January designation.
Okay. No, I'm happy you went. So it just sounds like in January, we'll add that to our list of appointing like we do. Okay, great.
Yes.
That's what I needed. Thank you.
Okay. So our first study item is it's third study session for those of you that keep track, and it is on the senior center discussion. So Mr. Kaiser, can you please, you're already on screen. All right, sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. I'm Matt Kaiser. I'm your city attorney. As the mayor indicated, this is the third of 3 scheduled study sessions that we've had related to the senior center. And I think it's important just to emphasize at the outset 2 things. The first is, in part, the reason why you're on study session 3 is that it's been recognized by the council in the past that the senior center, community center, has been an important community asset, which warrants a certain degree of time. And that kind of leads into point number 2, which is a little bit of how we got here. As council may recall from prior study sessions, the last time that council extensively looked at the community center was back in 2016, when it initiated a 5-year lease with Community Connection Place for a lease. That lease had 2 5-year terms. That first 5-year term is set to expire, and before the council is, and hopefully what will come out of tonight, is a council consensus on what next steps. We've had the opportunity over the course of the prior 2 study sessions to recap the lease, to recap some of the legal environment. You also heard last week from Sheila Phillip, who is the proprietor or the operator of Community Connection Place, with her opportunity to comment. From that, in terms of council consensus, the decisions that the framework that we've identified is largely unchanged, but at least it's coalesced from when we began this. And those options, as we outlined for council couple weeks ago, really come down to 3 real options. The memo identifies a 4th. I'm not going to talk about that 4th, but it really identifies 3 actions for which we're looking for council consensus on tonight. The first is whether just simply extend the lease as is for that second 5-year term. No additional conditions, no nothing, just here's another 5-year term. The second is to extend the lease, but make changes to the lease that are mutually acceptable to both the council as well as Community Connection Place. Newsflash, that will be the staff recommendation. I'll talk about that in a little bit further detail in a minute. And then third is to solicit a different third party to operate the community center, whether it's through an RFP, RFQ, or other letter of intent type process moving forward. And I want to kind of go through why we have the recommendation we have together with some of the competing alternatives, and then turn it over to the council. I think has council had the opportunity here at the last study session and some of the materials that you've had in the packet, there is certainly support for the community center and its current operator. You've received a number of petitions or signed materials, both in the packet as well as some that came in over the weekend that were distributed to council earlier today. You may recall that back in the 2016 timeframe, Community Connection Place was the one outfit that stepped up when the facility was otherwise set to go dark. And there just wasn't anything else out there. Now, that doesn't mean that they're the default option just because they stepped up. The question ultimately comes down to how they operated that center. You had the opportunity to talk to Ms. Phillip directly about that over the course of the last 5 years. And hopefully council's had the opportunity to see how those questions and answers went through. To be sure, that certainly poses some challenges and concerns, both within the community and the like. But at the end of the day, is that the best choice moving forward? In looking at the contract, together with some of the other options that you have out there, there are pieces of the contract that certainly jumped out that probably warrant a revision, at least with the benefit of hindsight. Some of those I've outlined for council in the accompanying study session materials. I just want to touch on a couple of the key high points. The first is the term of lease. One of the things that came to light in one of the early study sessions is there's no really rollover provision. What happens if the lease ends and we don't have a plan B? Does it go month to month or anything else? That probably needs to be clarified. But more importantly, if things aren't going in the direction that we want it to go, do we have to wait a full 5 years, or is there some other way to look at that? And a common feature of a lot of other contracts, it's not in this contract, but in other contracts, is termination for convenience, but with an extended lead time to terminate that. If for whatever reason the city wants to go in a different direction, or if things change on the ground, or our interests change. You heard touched up. So there's that. The second is to what extent the council, and the city want to have a say in the ongoing operations. You heard from Ms. Phillip when she addressed the council at the last meeting. She had indicated that she's beginning to form a committee that works under the Community Connection Place umbrella to provide community input. That's an encouraging step. But then part of the discussion is, well, what if that's not good enough? And how do we continue to have a say? So baking a piece of that into the agreement certainly seems prudent. The third thing I want to talk about is just briefly what I refer to in the memo as a holdback. You heard a presentation from Pierce County Parks in terms of some of their recreation opportunities. We don't have a provision in our current contract where we can set aside time as our own facility. We do in one of our other leases, which is to the Audubon Society for the Adriana Hess House. But in terms of putting that in with the community center and trying to leverage the facilities and the opportunities that that has to offer, that seems to be a prudent measure. That when the Community Connection Place is not using it, the city can use it and try and co-program that space. And then the fourth and final thing I just want to talk about here before I turn it back to council is looking at a contractual requirement for reporting. For the last 5 years, almost 5 years, there hasn't been much in the way of reporting. What's been going on down there? We've received some of that reporting in the course of these discussions, but making sure that we have ongoing reports. Is the community center being used in the way that council would like for it to be used? And so hopefully it's being used in that way. But if it's not that, we can do some of those course corrections along the way and have those conversations to ensure that oversight. So with that, that concludes my preliminary remarks. As I stated at the outset, hopefully tonight is to get council direction on next steps. And with that, I will turn it back to the council.
Okay, I see Councilmember Fleming, you raised your hand.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I gotta figure out how to put it down here. Matt, thank you for that report. And I do is continuing the contract with the same group that's there, but I do like your recommendation on reporting. The other thing that I would ask when we go back to put together an agreement with them is we had some conversation about concerns that have been raised about from citizens regarding sometimes feeling that they were being either neglected or singled out or whatever. I would like to see some language to make sure that there's equity for all comers when they come to the center to use that, and some consideration given. And I don't know how you word it, that's part of the agreement, so that they don't select who's in and who's out. I'm not articulating this very well, I know, but I hope you're getting the gist of it.
Yeah, I think so. If I can maybe restate it, you don't necessarily want to manage the day-to-day operations, but from a big picture perspective, we want to make sure that all groups are equally included in their facility and access for as broad of an range as possible.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That's all I got.
Councilmember Keel, followed by Councilmember McCluskey.
Great, thank you, Mayor. And Matt, thank you for your report. I am very much in favor of having the people operating it to continue to operate. I like your notion of the same contract, but we work in some other kind of stipulations, like, carving out a day for the county to do for us to, work with them on some programs. I also like the reporting piece of it. And two points about reporting. I would like to have them to provide us a report, but also that the council, when we give feedback, that feedback is viewed as kind of direction, for improvement, not oh, thank you for your feedback, and then they go off and do whatever they were doing before, right? So I would like for it to be, something that has to be paid attention to. And to Councilmember Fleming's point, the thought that I had around, making sure we understand what's going on there in the day-to-day is maybe in the reporting piece, we set up a senior, I don't know what we call it, ad hoc group or a user group.
I called it in our draft materials a steering committee, but I mean, you're certainly free to call it what you like.
Yeah. So yeah, something, but it's independent of the operator down there, and it's a community of seniors that report to us directly, that gives us kind of, their feelings, their thoughts, and feedback of how things are going. And then, of course, we can get their feedback and then act on that too as well. Those are my comments. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember McCluskey, followed by Councilmember Lee.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. So some of my comments are in concurrence with what has been stated in the past. When we go into the criteria of the steering committee, making them accountable, equality and accessibility, I hope that we work with the organization, because they have things in motion currently that is aligning with those statements. So to ensure that the council gets the right feedback that they need, but also not undermining the direction of the program that's going forward right now, because after a lot of the senior centers are doing a graduated reopening since the pandemic. So there's things that have been stagnating and now they're opening up. There is a new partnership, I think it's with Grace, that is coming in, and they have a collection of additional senior services that will be coming up to CCP. Ms. Phillips did reach out to Pierce County in regards to a partnership to open it up for the program that the Pierce County Parks presented to the City Council, and they have not gotten back to her as of yet. It seems that Pierce County needs the staff to say that it's okay, apparently, for them to have the conversation. So with the carving out of a particular program that the City Council would like to have going forward, whether it's with Pierce County Parks, there needs to be a procedure and a protocol, because a business is going forward. They need to know also how that is going to look and what the procedural things are going forward. Adriana Hess has a space for the city, but it's one space in that building. The rest is Audubon. And so when that one space is being used, Audubon can still function. It's the conference room out in the back. So what does that look like? I think needs to be well thought out and well designed, so that it doesn't hamper the overall operations, because there is a nonprofit board that manages Community Connection Place as well, with that oversight. So we're venturing into a public-private partnership that we're expecting certain outcomes and criteria to ensure that that dovetails well, and so it provides fluidity as well as positive growth for the organization, as well as fitting some of the City Council's criteria that I heard from the last two council members. I think it's reasonable and I think it's doable, but to have that sensitivity when that is needed going forward. And in the lease, there was a indication of marketing. I think marketing is essential to the success of Community Connection Place. but also I would like to look in-house at our marketing as well, because we don't reach all of our citizens when we do our own marketing. So I like to be sensitive when we establish a criteria in another organization as to what that marketing is actually going to look like and be, you know, and if we can, as a city, mandate certain marketing techniques to another organization. I'm not really sure. So as we all know, communication is a tough nut to crack. And we've been working with the social media and all sorts of different facets, and it doesn't reach all of our citizens. We don't have a newspaper. We don't advertise in the newspaper. And there's certain segments that when we do community-wide events, they don't know about it and they don't come. So we're hitting the same marketing pool over and over again. And so how are we going to fix that, and how are we going to create oversight for another organization, and what is that going to look like? Hitting all of our seniors, making them do postcards to all the seniors? I'm not really sure, but certainly marketing is essential, but I'm not sure as a city government we can mandate the marketing criteria of another organization that has another lead board controlling the funding and the projects. So, and then with the stakeholder group that is currently being formed, I think that instead of designing two different groups, to maybe ask if the city can add that stakeholder group can do separate report outs, and hopefully they'll have the CCP's board approval as well, because right now with sitting, they're being designed under the Community Connection Places umbrella, which means they're accountable to the board, not to the city. So how that is reported out might be directly looking a little differently. And if we want a separate accountability group, an oversight over another nonprofit. You know, we don't have oversight over UP Historical Society. You know, they haven't been reporting out to us recently either, which we may look at that. We talk about equity and being fair. I think we need to look at that oversight as well if we expect to have an oversight over a community connection place. So everyone that is partnered with the city is treated the same. And the other one is in, I'm having a hard time reading my notes here. I think it's in H20, well, it's called, you called it the General Force Majeure, number C, and it's in regards to government restrictions. And I noted that do we need to call out like pandemic? Government restrictions is like different.
So
pandemic. So pandemic wasn't really noted. So Mr. Kaiser, that was kind of my comment.
I looked at the force majeure clause when I was sitting down again to look at this last week. And I will tell you that most of the short answer to your question is yes, we do. And we will need to probably come back with a modified force majeure clause when this comes back for council action.
Okay. All right.
I will tell you that virtually all of our contracts, we've updated our boilerplate contract to address force majeure clauses. And we use, and for those that don't know, force majeure is essentially there's a circumstance outside your control that impacts the ability of a party to perform on the contract. We've been using one of two force majeure clauses depending on what it is that we're trying to do. The first is that the boilerplate reads effectively that the contract executed during the COVID-19 emergency, that's not an excuse to get out of the contract. The other is because there's a force majeure event, we might want to get out of the contract. And we've been looking at those depending on where our risk tolerance is on a particular contract. So we have been fairly strategic about which one of those clauses or modifications of those clauses we can put in there. We're going to want to tweak it for the final product when it does come back.
Okay, right, I appreciate that. That's all my comments thus far. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Lee, followed by Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Councilmember Lee, I agree with everything everybody else has said. I think the lease should be extended with some changes. I would like to see the lease, or excuse me, the operation of the center be community oriented, not just senior oriented. The seniors are an important component of our community, but so are the youth and families. I'm a member of the senior component, so I have a stake in this. But I think that the service provided by the center should appeal, or should serve all these components, not just one. I also think that the idea of a steering committee, or whatever you want to call it, that would give direction from time to time as to the operation of the center is smart. And also, I think that a report back is critical to making sure that we serve the whole community and not just a segment of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, followed by Councilmember Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor Bellisi. Let's see, yeah. Someone got my hand down. Oh no, hand's still up. All right. In any case, just a couple of quick thoughts. Just short responses. I'm in favor of extending the lease with the modifications as we've discussed, not necessarily all the modifications we discussed from my perspective. The of interest is being able to provide some sort of feedback loop with in terms of getting reporting out annually, I suppose, from the user that's in there. And that does make sense in a number of other venues in addition to this. But here's a chance to get it into the contract or the lease. The carving out of some specific time, if we can identify, and certainly it needs to be workable to the user and to meet the needs that the city is trying to address. That can be a little challenging, I can appreciate, and so it has to be something that is agreeable to both and doesn't overly impact either its purpose or the user's primary uses. The steering committee, I'm actually not that much of a fan of. And I'm particularly not a fan when it's called steering committee. So if it was more about stakeholders, users group, great. Steering committee implies a certain amount of authority over the organization or the lease, or for that matter, the city. And I don't think that's the case. Getting some feedback from people that are using the facility is a great thing to do. And if we can do that in the form of a task force or a periodic get together or some other approach, fine. But adding another body to both form, manage, and then staff support I want to think about that somewhat carefully, as opposed to something that may be around for a few months to get the purpose done and then wait until another renewal period is coming. So those are just some quick thoughts on my side. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Worthington. Now, Councilmember Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. And I agree with Councilmember Worthington and agree with him on that. I would say user group specifically. I didn't care. I think the terminology can really set forth some expectations of the group or others. So I think user group are probably, in my mind, is the best name, because that's who they are. I also would like to, I really would like to have us just give the policy direction as to what this contract should be for the administration to follow through. I'm not, in all respect to Councilmember Keel, I understand about how to want to, fill our constituents and get back to a contractor or someone like Community Connections, but I don't want to see us in the middle. I think that we need to get the policy direction of how the facility is to be used and for what purposes, and then let the administration, as their job is, to implement what's in that contract that meets the needs and the intent of the council. And that group, if they have, yes, a group, but they should be reporting to the city manager's directive if they have any issues. And then it's up to Steve to settle that between the contractor, the lessee, and the user group that would, in his mind, what the direction was and our policy direction for the contract. But I don't really want the user group all of a sudden think they can make reports to us and then we're going to act on them on that. That's just, to me, doesn't feel good at all.
Thank you, Councilmember Figueroa. Well, I think I'm somewhat of a minority on this. 5 years ago, when Sheila Phillip came to us with the idea of having Community Connection Place absorb the senior center, I expressed my thoughts at that time on council and did say that her interest and her passion was children. I think to this day, her interest and passion is still children. The seniors that are there are the same seniors that were there 5 years ago. They haven't increased their numbers. All of the activities that are performed at the senior center are run and monitored and even done by the seniors. They provide their own material for those sessions. However, the pandemic has shown me that there is a need for seniors to get together. The problem is we've got the community center as it is. While it's 2,500 square feet, the only real gem in there is the commercial kitchen. The open space that's available for activities is very limited. We had problems when we were running the senior center with having activities there. Staff spent a lot of time tearing down and setting up furniture for changes of use during the day. CCP has the same issue. You can't have a lot of people in that facility to be able to grow the senior center, the senior program to be successful, or to provide the child care services that CCP currently has. We have a space limitation. I would love to see us being able to partner and use that facility for Pierce County parks. But how do you get 3 competing uses in a 2,500 square foot facility where the majority of it is your commercial kitchen? The big open space where you have meetings and stuff don't hold large numbers of people. I see the majority of council is wanting to extend the contract. I would be in agreement to extend the contract, but we do need to have some performance measures to hold CCP to. The seniors felt in year 2 of this 5-year contract that they were slowly being ousted for her child care. It started with having half days on Wednesdays cut, and then during vacation, the weeks off that the school system had for teacher days and what have you, that their programs were the first thing cut. So I think we need to put some limitations and specify minimum number of hours that we need to have for seniors and allow her the opportunity to program to meet those needs. I think requiring that time be devoted to having staff there that can work with the seniors that do attend the program and be the person to contact when there's problems or issues or they have suggestions would be a great idea. I know many times they come in, they don't know who is in charge at the facility, what the procedure is, et cetera. And we need new blood in the facility to keep it viable. If we do these measures, it would be prudent of us also to apply some of these report out requirements to the Historical Society, since they are also using a city-owned building. And we need to be aware of what's going on in there as well. But those are my thoughts. Thank you. And I see Councilmember McCluskey, you had your hand raised again.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. There's been certain changes. They do have a senior staff person at the desk now, greeting the seniors in daily. There has also, and I know you're shaking your head no, but I go in there on a weekly basis. And also we need to be careful what we ask a nonprofit. The seniors, and we know this because I do as well, because I was on the Park and Rec Commission. The seniors are always in the red. It's other services that support the seniors. And that's the crust of it. For years and years, supporting the seniors recreational service with the city subsidy. And also, when we had a viable and robust recreational program, it also supported the senior programming. That is great because the seniors should be supported. And if they can't sustain their services, we need to figure out how that's going to be if we want senior services within our city. So we decided to cut all recreational program. A nonprofit came in and picked up the ball in less than 45 days. She tried to figure out how to run a community center when her forte was before and after school services for that. So there is an issue when you ask a business to fully support senior programming and you don't supply them any funding. So I want the council to be aware of that. The children's programming supports the seniors. They are getting grants. They've hired a grant writer in recent years, and he has worked to get providing grants to get different amenities, not only for the children, but for the seniors as well. I think we need to be reasonable when we work with any nonprofit on how, when we do a request on a program that is in the red, how are they going to sustain that? So we may want the seniors to have exclusive accessibility to the senior center, but how reasonable is that if the program is not financially viable, but it is valuable within our city. Over the summer, she runs a summer day camp, so the summer months, the seniors have all the hours available to them at that time. It is true when they are out on breaks and the half days, the seniors are not able to come in and do their programming. But it's trying to get all those gears to work together to keep the programming afloat. So when the staff is in place and the council desire is to grow senior programming, to make it so that it is successful. So it is realistic. And if it is realistic, then I'll be totally on board with that. And I as Councilmember Figueroa, I don't want to be in the throes and the nicks and crannies of another nonprofit's business. I want to be the policymaker, but I want it to be reasonable and I want it to be doable. Thank you.
Councilmember Lee, followed by Councilmember Keel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One just quick comment. Councilmember McCluskey bringing up a good point about funding. However, most of the organizations similar to CCP and including the Historical Society have an aggressive fundraising program on their own. I don't know where CCP is on that, but I do know that the Historical Society is very successful in raising funds. And you'll find that most other nonprofits have some form of fundraising. Dance Theater Northwest, you can run down the whole gambit of nonprofits. They have an active fundraising program. So yes, that's important, very important. But I think a nonprofit probably has to help themselves with the fundraising. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Keel, I'd also like to acknowledge that we have one more item on our agenda and we're running a little bit late, so we can keep it short.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to come back to my comments and make sure I'm clear, because I don't think I'm quite understood in what my comment was. When I was talking about the user group giving us feedback, and that was just it, feedback. I'm not at all advocating that we're in the throes of managing day-to-day the contract. That is the contract that administration will do with the group. However, what I think I'm being misunderstood is that if there is an issue or a problem that anybody, the seniors or the kids or anybody that's having at that center, they're going to come to us. They're going to call us. They're going to send us an email. They're going to say, council, this and this is going on and that's going on. Would you please do something? They will do that. And you all know that. And so what my comment is that we just set up a time where we listen to their feedback, not get into any administrative, we're going to fix it, managing the contract, managing the day-to-day. And I'm not even advocating that when they come to us and give us stuff, that we've committed to do anything about it. We're committing to listen. And if what we hear, we think there's some merit to it and we need to do something about it, then we act. If there's nothing, we don't want to do anything, or the majority of us doesn't want to do anything, then we don't do anything. That's what we do with everything. We have public comment and people tell us stuff and we'll do something about it if it fits us, and if it doesn't, we don't. What I'm saying is set up a process so that we already are ahead of what we know is going to come to us anyway, and without trying to get involved into the day-to-day stuff. My last comment is about, and I agree with Councilmember, I'm happy to say that now, Councilmember Lee, about the funding. The reason why we turned it over to CCP was because we didn't have money. And now to say, well, we gave it to them because we didn't have money, but now that we give it to them, we got to give them money. Doesn't make sense to me. And so they knew we didn't have money when they took it over. Okay, so I'm not prepared to say they were going to give them money now. So that's what the grant writing is for, and that's what the kids programs are for, to help undergird what they're doing down there. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Councilmember Figueroa, did you have final words? I noticed your hand was raised.
Hold on. Yes, thank you, Mayor. Just real quick, Councilmember Kill, I just want to make sure that I know what you're saying. You know, we always get hit by constituents directly. However, many of those, as we have done, is say this needs to go to staff. I don't, instead of bringing it before, I wasn't sure when you say, well, bring it, the user group can come directly to the council. Well, I guess anyone or any group can go to a council member and say, hey, I'm having issues. My first response is, have you taken it up with the city manager or the director that's in charge of that? Because they need to see if they can handle it according to operations. And if they can't, for whatever reason, you know, Steve and company should come to us and say, well, this is an issue that we can't resolve, and maybe we need to amend the contract or whatever the case may be. But I don't want to give this illusion to the user group that we're kind of blessing if we, as we move forward, that they can say as a group come to Port Council and spill their complaints or issues. I think that the first thing they need to do, what we should be telling them, is you need to go back to the city manager and let them handle any issues involving the contract. As far as money, I think that if I heard McCluskey correctly, it's an issue about the usage of the facility for daycare. And I agree, you know, this is supposed to be for senior citizens mostly, with some side effects of side notes of some other uses, but it seems like it was more of the daycare. But as I was listening to her, to Denise, was that's what has provided the funding. Until they can get some grants going or some fundraising going, they've used that daycare as a prop to help them finance any little bit that they've had that they could afford to do the senior program. That's what I heard. And the more they did that, the more they were able to give back to the senior citizens, is what I was. Again, I wish them good luck in fundraising. I agree with Kill and Lee, and that is that they should really, and I think they're hearing this loud and clear, they need to start focusing on how to get grants and fundraising to help with the senior citizens being a priority over needing to do daycare. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. So, Mr. Kaiser, do you have the information you need to move forward?
I believe I do. I will tell you, it's going to probably require a rewatch of tonight's council meeting, but I do. And I just want to share with council what I anticipate next steps to be. Is my hope is that there is not a study session number 4 on this, and it comes back. What next time we talk about this, hopefully, will be for action on a mutually agreeable contract with the comments and observations that council has made tonight.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll go on to our final agenda item, and that's the 2022 legislative agenda. Can Eric Faison please turn his camera on? Or is he even? Is he even here?
Mayor, I'm going to, Eric was not able to come here tonight, but I'm going to cover for him on this particular item on your agenda. So tonight, in your packet, you've got a memorandum that Eric put together, and I think it sums it up pretty well. And this was mentioned at the last meeting that we had, where we talked about the legislative agenda and the accomplishments in 2021. It was a good session. Among things that were discussed, police reform and so forth. I won't go through them all. Infrastructure investment, financial flexibility, Initiative 976, city-state partnerships. So I went through those all last time with you at the previous council meeting. Now, going into 2022, we have a legislative agenda that is traditionally, it follows AWC's legislative priorities to the extent they're consistent with the city's goals. And AWC's 2022 legislative priorities include passing a transportation package, which I think that is agreed that it's needed. And basic infrastructure funding, of course, and that's been on their their target list for a long time, and protect TBD funding authority. So those are things that are well known to the council, and those are on AWC's legislative priorities list. What's missing from AWC's priority list is police reform bills. Now, as you know, and you've heard from our chief, and you've, I'm sure, been reading various publications and so forth, that police reform is still a topic of conversation by groups such as the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs and other law enforcement groups. And at this point, as of this day that we're meeting here today, we don't have any specific updates to give you. We are monitoring what's those discussions that are going on in Olympia through our contacts there, and we're trying. And as we receive an update of discussions on the topics of police reform, we can always bring those back. You're not under any urgency to pass this legislative agenda for 2022 tonight. This, by the way, this is not an action item. It's a study item, as you pointed out, Mayor. So tonight is really just to lay out the initial framework for an agenda for 2022. So with that, besides those things I mentioned, AWC's identified priorities, again, police reform, set that aside for now while the discussions continue, and we hope that more information becomes available that would inform our own council on what statements they want to put within and recommendations they want to put in the agenda. So now I want to move on to capital budget funding, and it's pretty well summarized in the packet. A thank you for those that had inputs over the past couple weeks, sending those to Eric. He was able to compile several of those. We have identified 3 priorities that, let me start with the staff identified priorities, then we'll get to the council priorities. One is Chambers Creek Pedestrian Bridge. Now, there's a bridge under construction on Chambers Creek Trail. It's called Bridge Number 1, not a really novel name, but it's Pedestrian Bridge Number 1 on the trail. Fully funded, 3 parties, Pierce County, Lakewood, and UP. Our own city council approved the interlocal agreement. You all remember that. So that's fully funded. It's partially grant funded, partially local funded by each of the partners. That project is moving forward. Great. Now, to open up more of the trail, we're going to need a second bridge. And we believe that once that second bridge is, if we can get the second bridge in, we'll have what we believe is a sufficient amount of trail that those 2 bridges will be sufficient to make the canyon accessible from top to bottom. That bridge is currently $1.264 million beyond the amount of funding that we have available between grant funding through the state as well as our own local shares, Pierce County, Lakewood, and UP. We all have equal shares in that. That bridge, that funding gap, we've reached out to Lakewood and they've indicated that they are looking at putting monies in their budget to cover their share. We have identified monies in our budget through the budget amendment process that you reviewed earlier, and we're waiting to hear from Pierce County. It would be preferable that we don't have to tap our funding, and we'd like to see that our own local funding. We believe this is a regional facility, and it's worthy of potentially a capital ask. So rather than each of us tap our own general funds or funds within our own budgets, the staff has recommended $1.264 million request for additional to complete to fund the gap in current funding to get that bridge, what we call Bridge Number 2, done. Now, it's not just a bridge, it's a boardwalk, which is one of the reasons why there's some additional cost beyond what was identified a number of years ago, 2017, 2018, I believe, when the original consultant estimated a single bridge would do it. It's subsequently been found that a boardwalk is needed, and a number of other things in the process of design. So the current designer is now, has now come up with an estimate, and we have what we have. So that's what we believe is necessary. Let's just round it up to 1.3 million, but 1.264, 1.3 million is approximately the amount. The second item in the capital area is the Day Island Bridge study. Now, we met out there last year, actually earlier this year, much earlier this year, with Congresswoman Strickland and her staff to indicate that we've got a university place, and that's the Day Island Bridge, and we don't have any funding for that. That would be a very spendy bridge to replace in the event of an earthquake that goes out of service. It's the single access for emergency responders as well as the residents on the island. That's $25 million estimate to replace that. Well, what's needed before anything can be done is first to do a proper study on that, make sure that bridge, make sure we've identified all the necessary things, necessary items that, and options, alternatives, cost estimates, et cetera. So an initial study is needed, $250,000, $250,000. That would be a good request, potentially, in addition to the one I just mentioned, the Chambers Creek Pedestrian Bridge. And number 3 is the Homestead Park Pavilion. It's one of the things that we've identified. We've met with you individually, and we'll be coming back on November 15th with the GGLOs coming back to you on Homestead Park with the overall master plan improvements to get your feedback before they go to construction documents. We won't go to construction documents until you see what those improvements are and see if you're okay with them. And so anyway, so that's coming up. In the meantime, we have a pavilion, which would be a small building, similar to the building that the example I think we've all identified for you is there's a similar building up in Kenmore called the Kenmore Hangar building. We're not proposing a hangar. We don't park planes. It's a Kenmore, obviously, the city of Kenmore, as its namesake, has a very nice public a building with a coffee shop inside and a public restroom, and it's a nice looking facility, and it really serves their needs on a plaza. Well, a similar use for such a building, not called a hangar, but a pavilion, Homestead Park Pavilion. You could name it whatever you want. That's how we identify it as of today for you. So that would be $500,000 to match the federal contribution, which we've got $500,000 sitting in Congress waiting for the Senate's approval. The infrastructure bill that's talked about every morning, noon, and night of every day, and we all await to hear that because we're on the list. We're in the appropriation. If it gets through the Senate and gets passed, then we can anticipate the $500,000 from the feds, $500,000 from the state would be to match that. That would get us $1 million, get us a lot closer to what we need to build that building, what we're calling the pavilion. So now I want to move on. Those are 3 staff recommendations or staff ideas, not recommendations. We're putting this out there for a little bit of brainstorming. Now I want to get on to some other ideas. Councilmember Figueroa had sent us 4 additional ideas, additional sewer infrastructure funds. As you know, we've got we've got a certain amount of ARPA funds as well as state funds, and I think the total is $9 or close to $9.5, $10 million, of which you wanted to allocate a certain amount. You've indicated to the county, you've communicated that to them, that we're willing to put a significant amount of dollars. The final amounts yet to be determined, but a number mentioned here in this council has been approximately 6.5. And then in addition, there's the 2.1 from the state. So these are all grant funds, not local funds. These are grant, federal and state. Well, Councilmember Figueroa said, maybe potentially additional sewer infrastructure funds would be one idea. A second one would be funds for a community center. Well, actually, maybe what I can do is, rather than me explain Councilmember Figueroa's request, I think he can do a much better job to explain that. So let me just stop right there, Mayor. You've got the staff recommendations, the three I mentioned: Chambers Creek Pedestrian Bridge, the Day Island Bridge Study, and the Homestead Park Pavilion would be three ideas. These are not recommendations, just ideas at this point. So I'll turn it back to you, Mayor, to open it up for discussion and any council thoughts on this.
Okay. Councilmember Figueroa, did you want to add something to this before we move forward? If you do, I would suggest that we do an extension of time before we get into the discussion part. We're at 8:21 at the moment. Let's do it till 8:45. Do I have
Steve,
a first and a second?
Steve, can you bring up that list?
Yeah. Just a moment, Councilmember Figueroa. I need a first on the motion to extend.
And Mayor Belisi, this is Mayor Pro Tem Worthington. I move we extend our meeting to 8:45 this evening.
Okay, do I have a second?
Councilmember Keel, I second.
Okay, any objections? Okay, our meeting has been extended. Go ahead, Councilmember Figueroa.
Okay, Councilmember Figueroa, just give me 1 second. I'm going to see how good my skills are at sharing a screen. And we will hold this up here.
While you're doing that, I'll start because of timing, but go ahead and bring it up.
All right.
There we go.
So are you seeing this now?
I am.
Yep.
Okay. Everyone can see this? All right. Go ahead. That's the full capital funding list. So it's hopefully in one screen you can see everything, staff ideas and Councilmember Figueroa's other ideas.
So, Council, number one, the additional sewer infrastructure funds was primarily to start focusing on some of the residential areas as well. I know that, and I agreed that the HARPA and the majority, be given to commercial for economic development. I totally agree with what Councilmember Worthington tried to convey to us, and I agree with that. Hopefully that all passes later on with our approval on use of those funds. But I think we need to still continue to look at getting state funds to help us with slowly and surely get some of our residents out of some very antiquated sewer system. Number two, we talked a lot about, this has been going on for ages in our city about a community center. And especially when a community center went up with the pools up at Fir Crest, I got hit with several. And you've heard some here recently with an email, or I forget what kind of communication that came up with the sewer community center. But that prompted me to say, I'm not a believer that we're ready financially or otherwise, because it's not just about the cost, but also the maintenance and upkeep and the staffing, and now all of a sudden programs. But I'm thinking that maybe we talk about leveraging and multi-jurisdictional, partnerships like we are with the police and the fire district and you name it, housing, affordable housing and all that. I think we should be looking at, instead of doing a standalone UP only community center at Cirque Park, is to look and partner with the county to do something at the county, because that's a lot of people will come and use this community center anyway, and it's a great place for it. And I think that we should start the conversation where we might be able to partner and with the intent of getting some grants from the state to do so. It becomes a stronger case. Number three was, I think that we're hampered by on some of our economic development, and one specific property is over there by 27th and Grandview, where there's been a delay of a development because of hazardous materials there, contaminated lot there, and over 100,000 or whatever it is. And so, and who knows when another site might come up. But I think it would be nice to have some funds available to us to assist, whether it be private or public, to assist and as a matching, 50-50, say, hey, get off your the dime and clean up this site so we can continue economic development, and we'll pitch in. So those are the kind of ideas. Again, there's just ideas, but I think that we need to start thinking that way in order to allow some of the sites to get developed. And then the last one is we talk about homeless, and it comes in so many segments. Homelessness comes in so many segments, as far as public safety. There's public safety about, people running around and out there that could present public safety to the general public. But I also think that it's a public safety when they vacate an area and they leave debris of sorts that is not safe for anyone that's coming around those sites. And so I think that, and it is a cost, but we sometimes, whether it be private or public, we should be have a great interest in cleaning it up sooner than later, because we can say, well, it's the responsibility of someone else, but all people see is our city, and I think that we need to stay in front of any homelessness cleanup that may come to our city, and be in the front of it by having funds available to do such cleanup. So in summary, that's kind of where my thoughts are, and certainly for conversation, I know this is not maybe all in one swallow for this next session, but I think these if you agree, whether it be state legislative agendas or not, maybe they're not at the state level. I think most of them could be, but some of them maybe not, and consider in doing in some other manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fleming, followed by Councilmember McCluskey.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll try to be brief on my comments. Steve, just a quick question for my own education on the Homestead Park Pavilion. I don't know what the Kenmore one looks like, but I do know what the Puyallup Pavilion looks like. Is that similar to what you're talking about?
Yes, a much scaled down version of the Puyallup Pavilion, but yes.
Okay. And these are not in priority, I take it. These are just ideas that you kind of tossed out there.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
I like the proposals that are out there or that have been put up for conversation. I think the Day Island Bridge study needs to move forward. If we can get the legislature to buy into that bridge is long overdue. We've been talking about replacing that bridge, quite frankly, for the last 25 years. And I think we threw a Band-Aid at it once upon a time to kind of hold it together. But I think that Band-Aid has kind of seen its life expectancy. So that was no pun intended by a doctor, but I guess it kind of works. I think that really should be, if we were looking at those three projects there, that would be the number one on that list. And I think those are well thought out. All those are well thought out. I really applaud what Councilmember Figueroa has said here, because the real focus is on economic development. You look at any one of those recommendations, all of those affect economic development and enhancements to the city. And I think those are things that we should really be pushing, especially if we're looking at legislative agendas. The thing that's not on this list is the thing that you and I talked about, Steve, which has a regional impact as well as an economic development impact, and that is completion of the Chambers Creek Road down to the golf course. Those are funds we don't have in the city, but yet everyone from around the region will benefit, just like we have completed Cirque Drive that leads down to that area. I would like to put that out for the council conversation to be had at some point of, instead of the city funding all of that road completion, see if we can get some matching funds out of the state and maybe even the county to complete the improvements on that road leading down to that golf course. So that's the only thing I would add, but I like everything I see here.
So if I may, Councilmember Fleming, the Chambers Creek Road to complete everything down to Chambers Bay on Chambers Creek Road is $3.5 million is the estimate as of today. So the total cost, that, you know, if you went something less than that and just went for a match, then obviously you could choose another number.
Sure. Nothing ventured, nothing gained with the legislature. I put it on the table.
Thank you, Councilmember Fleming. Councilmember McCluskey, followed by Mayor Pro Tem Worthington.
Thank you, Mayor. I like all the staff recommendations and Councilmember Figueroa's recommendations as well for the reasons that were provided by both Councilmembers Figueroa and Fleming. I have especially vested interest in the Day Island Bridge study. That would be my top priority. And I didn't realize the history of how it was together, and now it's at the end of its life expectancy. Sounds pretty dire. And it also has a sewer system that's running, so if it ever goes, it's going to be pretty stinky as well. Over a very sensitive area, right? Yeah, the railroad might not be so thrilled when they pass through that section after it, tweaks itself. The Chambers Creek Pedestrian Bridge, I'm in favor of, but isn't there 4 bridges along that? And Mr. Stugg, you were saying that you're just focusing on 2 bridges right now?
Excellent question, Councilmember McCluskey. That was a discussion we had just yesterday this morning, actually. And the Chambers Creek Trail can be completely made accessible with just 2 bridges. There's 2 additional bridges that are nice to have, but not necessary. So, okay. But this one is essential to make areas of that trail accessible.
Right, because in the master site plan, there was initially 4.
Yes.
So, okay, all right. Thanks for that clarification. And the Homestead Park Pavilion is of interest, but I think we need to circle back with the council to make sure that everyone's on board with that. So I'm not sure if that should be popping up for the 2022 just yet. I am intrigued and I would like to study that further of a pavilion. I've seen some of the preliminary drawings and I like that focus and also that synergy and that center of activity and energy in that area. But I think that needs to circle back before I feel comfortable going to the state and saying, hey, we're on board with this, because I'm not really sure what my other fellow council members' comments are on this. And I'm not really that vested in it to intelligently talk about that either. So I'd like to have more information on it. In regards to Councilmember Figueroa's sewer infrastructure funds, yeah, absolutely. Because there are certain areas that are millions and millions of dollars to get that hooked up to sewer. The residents are not going to be able to afford that. And that's just like the Day Island Bridge, you know.
Right.
One day it will be a pretty stinky mess, and you know, then what? We can't have residents not being able to use their homes, and so to get that, I think would be prudent. What that dollar figure is, I think, whenever you do an ask, you need to have dollar figures there, because what's the next question? How much do you want? So we need to figure out how much do we want for that. The community center, I think that's premature to put that on it. I think it's intriguing, you know, for that coordination and partnership with the county. Sometimes the county isn't always that easy to work with, but so we need to talk about what, if ever we have a community center in UP, what is that going to look like? And one of the first steps for me is to open up Cirque Park Master Site Plan. There's a community center slated for there. There's land available. So in regards to this idea and to bringing that, what if, you know, there's a public-private partnership and the private partnership builds it, and there's another service provider that maintains the services, so there's limited city funds going into that, as we're doing our, what I call kind of our little pilot project with Community Connection Place, the leverage center for our seniors and some of our youth, and other events that might pop out of there once COVID settles down a little bit more. So I would like that to be brought back to the City Council in 2022 as a conversation in a study session, and to also look at, as Mr. Thorndale was made public comment as to the pickleball courts, because they're in high demand, and if that's a good fit. So I don't know the answers to all those questions. So before we do for a partnership and coordination with the county, I would really love to have that conversation next year in 2022 and bringing up all those ideas. The third, funds to clean up hazardous contaminated property. I'm wondering what that dollar figure is in our community that we currently have as contaminated property, and what's going on. Is it just $50,000 to clean it up, to have in a pot? Then maybe we don't need to do that ask when we have all these other, you know, infrastructure asks. So I would like to know what that is. But for sure, to aid economic development, and so that the biohazards don't impede that, as it had done on 27th and Grandview for that ridiculous amount of time. Public safety and homeless cleanup, absolutely. I would like a dollar figure on that, and how much of a homeless cleanup issue we have currently, what those funds are going to look like. And if that's a low ball amount, then I wouldn't put that on our legislative ask either. But I would certainly like to have a conversation about all those wonderful ideas that Councilmember Figueroa has presented. They're intriguing, and I think for 2022, I would love to discuss that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember McCluskey. We have 6 minutes remaining on our extended time. Mayor Pro Tem Worthington, you had some comments.
Thank you, Mayor Bellisi. Appreciate that. A few things. The staff suggested ideas for consideration. I'm in favor for all of those as well. And while the Homestead Park Pavilion is in a sense premature or even out of order, it is late of agenda. This is the occasion for it, and next week we'll probably get the next meeting. We'll have some more details to identify with that, and we can make a more complete decision, or at least start that decision process. But for the moment, having it on the list is worthwhile. I'd also point out that we didn't really have much on our federal ask list last year, but we may be on the threshold of getting $500,000 for this park if the infrastructure bill passes. And that was more of an opportunistic item for us, meaning the opportunity came up and we were ready for it. And this is a lot of what this list gets to be, is if something comes up that is close, we can put it to good use and have a sense of where we want to go with it. The various items that Councilmember Figueroa has put together are also very interesting. Certainly sewer infrastructure is high on my list as well, in terms of interest and what it will do for the community, as we've already talked about numerous times and we're ready to move forward with. The community center, though, strikes me as a bit premature right now. It's a chicken or egg issue. I would rather we start talking about a partnership with a provider and then together talk about a community center and such. With that partnership, we may be able to figure out a way to both serve that, whoever the service provider may be, if that occurs. We may also find funding from different sources as an outcome as well. But it's a chicken or egg issue. I just prefer the chicken in this case, or maybe it's the egg, whichever. So anyhow, but the other side of it. The other two items on the list are intriguing, but strike me as items that could probably be considered in the budget process, depending upon what the dollars are that are assigned to it. I do know that with item 3, we have to be careful not to become in the lineage of the potential cleanup effort itself. So we have some cradle-to-grave responsibilities for such things. That's why these things tend to take so long, as nobody wants to touch it. Because once you touch it, you own it, and you get to clean it up forever. So, but maybe there's protections and maybe there are not. But something we could explore. And I think one other item I was going to suggest is more about tracking the criminal justice reform efforts, and not so much as having an agenda as being able to be aware of what's happening with those issues and how they're being addressed on both sides of that question. So, and it's so we are ready to develop a position if we feel like we really need to. I think that's the sum of my comments. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else for final comments? We have 3 minutes remaining. Councilmember Figueroa, can you do it within the 3 minutes, or must we extend again?
No, 1 minute.
Okay.
Thank you. Steve, on the bridges, when it comes to naming them, I'd like to know if we have a choice of naming those bridges. And if so, I'd like to have that as part of the conversation in the future, like JBLM Bridge, or maybe the 16 Cap Bridge. Maybe the second bridge could be, name rights could be sold to raise some money. Anyway, just ideas. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I think I'm in concurrence with Councilmember Worthington. I think most of his ideas and agenda priorities reflect mine, so I'm not going to voice anything at this point on that. Any other final comments? We've got 2 minutes remaining. Did you get the information you needed, Mr. Sugg, to move forward?
This is very helpful, Mayor. We'll have additional discussion. You're not under pressure right now to, it's still 2021. We will get you to a point where you can approve an agenda and have the conversations with your delegation. So we'll keep refining this and bringing this back to you. Okay.
Not having any further discussion, a reminder again, council member, October 25th is an exec session, starts at 6 p.m. So I will see you all next week at 6 p.m. Meeting is adjourned.
Okay.